to at least give us the possibility of a circulation that's forming. There's also quite a bit in a different velocity mode. There's quite a bit of evidence based on this perspective of very strong outflowing winds coming in one direction, and then that little circulation coming back into the wind direction coming back into the thunderstorm itself. So that gives a little evidence of extra rotation. We'll see what the shear rate says on this, and it's still kind of in the strong range of the weak scale, but nonetheless, and there's a new pop-up just right now, moving past Ellington with a little bit of an enhancement in the circulation there, closing in on the Bernie Hill area. And in fact, one of our radar analysis tools will highlight where we can see a greater amount of circulation based on what Titan radar is showing. So that's what this little cylindrical circular shape is showing, where we do have some rotational values that are being picked up by the radar's analysis, which can lend some support to a possible tornado that can form within this zone. This is based on the Moody Air Force Base radar scope and its data. So there is increasing evidence that we can see something that's trying to spin up and may touch the ground here, beginning to push across into the western side of Cook County, close to the Bernie Hill area, and just beginning to leave the Ellington vicinity. So for Adel and Sparks, this thunderstorm is not too far off from you. So what I'll do is put a little more distance on this, and I'll put on a storm track so you have at least a general idea of how close this thunderstorm can be to certain areas. And if it is moving at 45 miles per hour, we'll give you as much estimated time of arrival as we can based on our tracking abilities here. So near Sparks around 1:52, that's 10 minutes from now. Adel about 12 minutes from you, so this can be within your area within the next 10 to 12 minutes along I-75 in Adel and Sparks. And in communities to the east of there, like Barnesville, Chaserville, Massey, and Cottle, it can be around your area between 1:50 and 2 o'clock. In Berrien County, around Nashville, the estimated time of its arrival is about 2:08. So you still have a good amount of lead time to make sure that you are in that safe place, wherever that may be, depending on what your action plan for severe weather is. If you don't have an action plan, I'll put one together pretty quickly to determine where you will be safe if this thunderstorm indeed does produce a tornado, and if it comes towards your communities here in the New and Little River area and over towards the Alapaha River area of southern Georgia over the next few minutes. So that's why we're on the air. You may have been watching our normal programming, and you might be in Tallahassee and thinking, oh, what's going on? There's nothing happening here. Well, it's happening in South Georgia. Cook and Berrien and sections of Colquitt County are within reach of our range, and we do want to make sure folks are well aware of the danger of a potentially tornadic thunderstorm coming into this region here, closing in on the I-75 area of South Georgia. So that's why we are covering this severe thunderstorm that does have a chance to produce a tornado, and that's why a tornado warning is up in Cook County, and especially closing in on the I-75 corridor near Sparks and Adel. That's where we have at least where we see this little circular symbol here indicating the radar's estimation of where a strong low-level circulation is forming, and that can be enough to give us the indication of something that can cause a funnel to develop and maybe touch the ground and cause some wind-related damage that can be connected to a possible tornado. So 1:44, I'd say you probably have about 5 to 8 minutes near the Sparks-Adel area to make sure you're in that safe shelter. Of course, this is just a freeze frame in time, but in severe weather mode, we do get new radar data roughly every 1 to 2 minutes, so that is something that's going to update. And of course, these just don't sit there. They continue to move. And if it's moving at 45 miles per hour, it's not going to take much time for it to get into areas closing in near Adel and Sparks and close to Barneyville area too. So we do have that ongoing threat here in the interior of South Georgia, where some of these thunderstorms are capable of creating gusty winds and low-level circulation that can push out a tornado in short order. Based on the information as I walk back and forth to get my communication lines with the National Weather Service, seeing what they are able to see and what they are advising, especially since they are the agency that triggers these tornado warnings, not here at First to Know Weather. They don't have any new updates for this, but definitely going off of some of the overall circulation and tools that we have here. There is still the ongoing sight that we do have some strong circulation, and it's beginning to push mostly along Highway 37, if I'm not mistaken there, just right around the river, and beginning to push more closer to the I-75 corridor. So again, Sparks in particular, Adel as well, those are the communities that need to be hunkered down, if you will, in a safe shelter for the potential of something that can cause at least a strong pickup in the winds and maybe even a quick, brief tornado touchdown. That's not out of the realm of possibility across this region. So that is something that we do have to keep in mind. That is possible, especially if a tornado warning is issued. And there's still the flashing box. I thought I saw it go away for just a moment, but that's not the case. We'll also look for maybe some indications of where debris may be up if the sustained circulation is strong enough. Seems like, again, where the green and red meet near the Bernie Hill area, and especially south of there on 37 as you're going towards Adel and Sparks, you're going to have some strong gusty winds, but if there is a circulation based on this perspective, it's going to be closer to where the actual green and red meet up. So if there is a tighter circulation causing a spin, it may be closer to the Bernie Hill area and closing in just on Clark Smith Road and maybe around Roundtree Bridge Road and along Highway 37 as you're getting closer to Sparks and on the north side of Adel. So that's going to be the main danger zone as far as I can tell from the radar data perspective, where we have strong gusty winds that's going to outflow even into Adel. So you will have some pickup in the winds, and it's not going to be all that great to be outside, but there is a circulation that is prompting some kind of tornadic circulation. It could be kind of closing in or maybe just straddling just north of Highway 37, just outside the Bernie Hill area, and that's where some of the strongest winds are being indicated on the base velocity mode, and the radar's shape and form definitely shows that little narrow gap in the data where there's that strong burst of outflowing winds that are kind of going out from the thunderstorm like so. Maybe not necessarily circulation rotating winds that would be moving towards Adel, but that bend there right along 37 is going to, I don't want to use too much hyperbole, but it's going to slam right into the I-75 corridor right through Adel and Sparks. If there is a circulation with this, it's likely to be just a little displaced here and maybe moving more towards Sparks and maybe just south of Barneyville. So that's kind of the zone where if there is enough circulation going on to keep a tornado on the ground, it would be within that area. So there is good enough reason to continue to monitor this step by step, make sure we're staying on top of it. And even for our viewers in southern Georgia, you matter to me, you matter to First to Know Weather. We're going to track this thunderstorm as long as a warning is up. And that's why we're on the air. That's why we're streaming. And if you don't have a thunderstorm nearby and you're wondering why we're on the air, that's because we do have a tornado warning within our viewing area. And that's what we do here at First to Know Weather. So Adel, Sparks, Barneyville, that's the zone where you do have the highest potential and the short-term possibility of getting something to swirl in the cloud that can cause a tornado. It may sound repetitive, but I know there are folks who have been through this before in this region, even in the recent past, and you certainly have the possibility to encounter this action once again with some pretty hefty force. Even if it's not necessarily a tornado, you do have the high likelihood of strong wind gusts that will start to come through that can exceed 60 miles per hour, and that can certainly cause a bit of spot damage in areas along Highway 37 there to the I-75 and US 41 region there. So that's going to be where, if we do have wind-related gusts and damage, it's likely to be within that zone. There may be a little broadening out, a little stretching out of the circulation. The reds don't exactly bump up against the green, but there's still that green shade there where at the level that this is being detected, which may be about 2,000 to 3,000 feet, still some pretty gusty, hefty winds. That one sample showing upwards of 50, but again, that's an estimate, and there has been at least the ongoing trend where the radar itself just shows how much of a gusty wind can be output from this area as it closes along 37 and approaches the Adel vicinity. We haven't talked much about hail. That's kind of a secondary concern when you have the possibility of a tornado, but there is still the hail likelihood, at least in a possible to maybe low and probable mode as the thunderstorm has been able to tap into a strong south wind flow and get that updraft, and that helps to create a cycle of hail production. So that is certainly part of the mix here in our severe weather setup here in Cook County, Georgia, near the I-75 region. So if you do have the gusty winds, you do have the heavy rain, you can also have some occasional hail in the mix with that, and that's something that you should probably also be well aware of as this system makes its push through this central Cook County corridor over the next few minutes ahead of us. So it's 1:50 right now. The warning is set to expire at 2 o'clock. We will be on the air until the warning is expired or otherwise canceled, but nonetheless, it is still having some approach towards the Adel vicinity. Be prepared for the likelihood of wind-related adversities with this thunderstorm. It does not have to necessarily be a bona fide tornado, and there has not been any indication that the radar has seen, yes, there's some debris, there's something being picked up. We're not at that point yet, so there is still not a confirmation of a tornado here within the Adel Sparks vicinity. If there is that, you would see this red flashing box here turn purple. That would be somewhat of an upgrade to the warning status to where the radar has seen something, and it can be a radar-confirmed tornado. But since it's still at a red phase here, definitely stay on guard and be alert for a quick changing bad weather here in Adel. But we're not seeing a confirmation on radar of a tornado that's actually on the ground. But there's definitely the force of gusty winds that will have adverse conditions popping up here in the Adel area. In fact, the base velocity showing wind gusts at this level of detection, which is probably, again, about 2,000 to 3,000 feet, of about 66 miles per hour. So there's still some very healthy wind gusts that can come out of this thunderstorm. And of course, when you have the rate of heavy rain that's being detected here and pushing out into the Adel area, you're bound to get in on wind-related effects, especially when it comes to snap trees, down trees. Power outages are a good possibility as well. We're streaming this coverage through our news and weather apps on our website, WTXL.TV, as well as on our social media. So you have different ways to stay connected to information that will be crucial in making sure that you're getting in on the information that you need to make sure you're making the right decisions in response to the presence of this thunderstorm. But still, that's where we see the oncoming gusty winds making its push into the Adel and Sparks area. And if there is a circulation, it's going to be where that little gap is. So kind of zoom in here, going to put in some of the radar data, and again, kind of ragged looking form when it comes to the tightness or the smaller scale compactness, if you will, of the circulation, but it's still showing at least some broad rotation in the Adel Sparks vicinity. And again, with our base wind velocity mode, very strong wind gusts are being indicated moving through Adel. So that's a zone where there will be some disruptions, some hefty disruptions most likely as we speak and going into the next several minutes. Now, this will continue to push to the east as we go into the end of this warning. The warning itself does extend into Berrien County. We'll see if there's any kind of readjustment to this, especially given the upcoming expiration time at 2 o'clock. But there is that high likelihood. In fact, the National Weather Service just also noting in their communications, we saw that one little spot where wind gusts could be upwards of about 66, and they estimate it could be even higher than that, about 70 miles per hour. So again, Adel, you definitely have to make sure you're not outside, even if there's not anything to see, because it's going to be very tough to have good visibility with all the heavy rain coming through. But even without any kind of visual confirmation of anything out there, you've got some very strong winds coming in your direction. It's going to be pretty rough in the next few minutes. In fact, right now, very likely that you have some of those higher wind gusts coming through you as we speak. And that's going to be something that's going to cause a lot of issues. And if you're in Adel or maybe just to the east of there, Sparks, Barnesdale is going to be one community that will get in on some of this activity. Also towards the Cottle area, we'll try to zoom in and get some of these street names visible. So again, around Highway 37, that's been the main corridor that this thunderstorm has been affecting, around and north of 37. So perhaps around the Boone Road area, Hutchinson Parish, Coxstill, perhaps around Lovett Circle, roads that lead into the Barnesdale area. Those will be some zones that you can have some of these effects of gusty winds and maybe some circulation that's notable from this thunderstorm. Mitchell Street as well in between Adel and Sparks, and then farther east of there from the Cottle to maybe around even the Nashville area once we get into Berrien County. That's where we have to monitor. So maybe Nashville, you're next in line for at least this signature on the radar, which can sometimes support a tornado that can form very quickly moving into the Nashville area in the next 10 minutes. So in Berrien County, definitely wise to make sure you're staying on top of this. We do not see confirmation based on radar yet, but the National Weather Service is going to continue this tornado warning, and it will stretch into more portions of our region, including in Lanier County, perhaps likely into the Berrien County area, all towards the Alapa River. We'll see the new configuration of that warning coming up very soon. That warning will expire at 2:45, so there's the new warning. Lanier County is included, a very small sliver of Lowndes County as well, and this extends until 2:45. So the 2 o'clock warning is still set to expire, but Nashville, Highway 129, Ray City, over to Lakeland, you will still have a warning. In fact, Lakeland is new in this tornado warning. Nashville, your warning is going to extend until 2:45 with this new coverage area. Cecil, you're included in that as well, and even a very small portion of northernmost Lowndes County, the Barretts area along 125. That's going to be one area that will need to be watched. But again, going off of the radar data and how it's kind of configured, how it's shaped, that is an indication of where strong winds are coming out, and that's where we can see maybe the tighter circulation that can support a tornado to form. So again, with the status of the new warning, this is a possibility that a tornado can form. It's not a confirmation that something has hit the ground. If we do see radar data that indicates there is debris, that will be something that will change the status of the warning. But it's that red warning, red tornado warning, meaning that a tornado is possible because the thunderstorm is currently strong enough to produce one, and the storm itself is on top of Adel, beginning to move towards that split where 37 splits off into the route that goes into Nashville. So be aware. Near Barnesdale, near Cottle, and some of the other maybe some unincorporated communities that can be in line east of Adel, along 37 Postel Road, if I'm saying that correctly, in Georgia 76. Those will be some zones. Register Road, Griffin Lane, if those sound familiar to you, if you're close to the river, those will be some, those neighborhoods, streets, communities, neighborhoods. Those will be in the path of this very strong indication of strong winds that may rotate enough to drop a tornado at any given time. The shear rate values, let's see what it's saying. Still on the strong side of the weak scale, but still present, still consistent enough to where there is still the need for the ongoing tornado warning here in Cook County. The Adel portion of the warning will be incorporated into this new warning. So the previous warning that was in Colquitt County, that will expire. It's not going to be renewed. And right along the river near the Reed-Bingham area, that portion of the warning will be allowed to expire at 2. But Adel, Sparks, East Central, Cook County, most of the southern flank of Berrien County, and even into northern Lowndes County, far northern Lowndes, and much of Lanier County. Those are going to be areas with the ongoing tornado warning until 2:45 for this persistent thunderstorm, which is on top of Adel right now and beginning to move towards the 76 and 37 Georgia highway corridors on the east side of the county. So we did highlight a few of those neighborhoods and communities that can have those gusty winds. And again, I do want to emphasize this is a tornado warning where a system is possible, a tornado is possible to form, but there have been some ongoing steady indicators of gusty winds, and that can certainly cause damage in and of itself. You don't have to have a twisting motion or something that's touching the ground to create wind damage, power outages, and other adversities of the like. This is certainly a real possibility, a real likelihood, I would say, just based on what we've been seeing over the last 15, 20, 30 minutes with this thunderstorm. And it's going to continue to make a push through the river on the east side of Cook County and moving more so into Berrien County. That's where this perspective is. Nashville area, you don't have anything for you right now, but this thunderstorm is not too far from getting into your vicinity, and it's likely to perhaps cause some rough weather for you as well. In fact, just to zoom out a little bit off screen, give you an idea, of just how close this thunderstorm is. That's an awfully big arrow. That's a new feature here, but roughly in about 12 minutes or so, based on this estimation, that we can have that portion of the thunderstorm moving towards the Nashville area. So there is good reason, since you have this tornado warning, to take that shelter as necessary in Nashville, in Allenville, and in Cottle, because that's where we have the highest chances to have some of those strong wind elements that will blend into perhaps a possible tornado. And I continue to emphasize possible, because that is the status that we're in right now. A possible tornado with likely strong gusty winds, especially within this little bulge here that's beginning to push along 37 and 76 as you go into Berrien County, where we have this little weak area. You have a lot of red and purple here, a lot of red here, but this little weak zone of green, that's where we can have some of that inflowing air that can kind of circulate around, and it does kind of correspond with some of the data that we have on our velocity mode of the radar. So that's why we're continuing to highlight some of these areas east of Adel, and now beginning to push more into Berrien County along the 37, 129 and 76 routes. That's where we're going to have that little triangle there in the west central side of Berrien County, is where we're going to have the highest chances for the roughest wind gust characteristics with this thunderstorm. And again, it does not have to be connected to an actual tornado, but the signals have been very consistent for strong winds, a high likelihood of such, moving along 76 and 37. There's also going to be the ongoing presence of hail within this. The hail track, as of the latest scan, showing the history of it as it's crossed through Colquitt County. Likelihood for large hail continuing in that eastern side of Cook County, based on the darker shades of pink and purple here near the Barnesdale and Cottle areas. That's where we're going to have at least the ongoing likelihood of some large hail that can fall from this thunderstorm, which is a natural expectation in a thunderstorm of this type. We can also have that effect coming into Nashville. So along with that tornado warning that you have in Nashville and south on 129, you also have the possibility of large hail that can come in, just depending on where the overall dynamics of the situation, the wind changeability, the wind nature and the characteristics, just how that comes into Berrien County will dictate whether you get the heavy rain and hail or maybe the enhanced wind gusts that come through. So again, can't emphasize that enough. There will be some rough weather coming into Berrien County over the next several minutes. I say within the next 5 to 10 minutes at least. I say 10 minutes at most in the Nashville area, and then south towards Allenville. New Lois, you should also be aware of the thunderstorm that is still along the 37 route. That will be passing near your area, where you can have some of those stronger gusts coming through. That has a real likelihood going into the next few minutes. And even beyond the scope of this region, we'll put a new storm track on this. And again, I'm going to emphasize and kind of highlight where we have that weak gap there in the radar data. If there is a tornado, and again, it's still an if, I've had no confirmation from radar or other sources that a tornado is actually there. But if it were to continue on its path, moving at about 45 miles per hour or so, Nashville, it gets to you within about 10 minutes. And then beyond that point towards the Weber area on the eastern side of Berrien County, it gets to you by about 2:20. These are estimated times of arrival, and these will move farther beyond the scope of our viewing area after 2:30. So there's still going to be a quick moving system. You can get rapidly deteriorating weather here in central Berrien County, especially from Nashville to Allenville, maybe even creeping towards Ray City. You might just be on the southern flank of that thunderstorm cell, but you are still also in that tornado warning, and it's definitely still a good idea to make sure you have the proper precautions in place. The interior room, no windows. Maybe if you have a interior bathroom that's kind of shielded from the walls or from the exterior, that's an ideal place to be within this tornado warned zone here for Berrien and even Lanier County. The Lanier County system is not, it's not maybe moving more into Lanier County over time. time, but there's still good enough reason to at least keep a very close watch on this. Lakeland to the north especially, where if this thunderstorm continues to move in this easterly fashion or maybe just slightly north of due east, it can stay north of Lakeland. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a definite projection right now, but that is a possibility if you are concerned about the tornado or the possible tornado or the wind gust pattern moving into the Lakeland area. Based on what we're seeing right now, it may just stay barely to your north, but there's still good enough reason to make sure that you are continuing to take appropriate shelter within this zone here, even in Lanier County, because the thunderstorm will likely clip the northern side of the county if it continues on its current track and maybe come very close to Lakeland, where you can still have a considerably strong wind gust threat from that thunderstorm as it moves in. So that is something you need to keep in mind in Lakeland. The farther south you are from Lakeland, the less likely this particular thunderstorm will come at you, but Lakeland to the north, you're definitely in a more prime spot to where some of the thunderstorms elements of gusty winds, hail, and perhaps a tornado circulating around, or even a funnel cloud, those are most likely to occur closest to this thunderstorm cell. We haven't even talked much about lightning. I don't think that's necessarily something that we need to focus a whole lot on, but there is frequent lightning across the northern flank of this thunderstorm. That's a natural effect as well. So you can certainly be prone to power outages, or at least power interruptions in this case, around Massey, around Nashville, and especially south of there with the frequency of the lightning and maybe some power outages triggered by strong gusty winds with this thunderstorm as it pushes its way now more so into Berrien County, Georgia, where we're going to focus in on our tracking and our overall trend of extra gusty winds and adverse weather coming into this region. And you might hear a little pinging noise in the back. That's some of the communications going on with the National Weather Service and information flowing in. So that's the reasoning behind that sound, where there's already been at least a few observations of gustier winds around Adel. Some of the information still being piped in as far as any other effects that have been reported, and some of that information does take time to filter through. But nonetheless, I'm going to just zoom out very quickly and show you that even though South Georgia has been the prime spot for active thunderstorms, there are others that are kind of moving to the east from the Florida-Alabama line region, where we had early morning severe weather. Now we're seeing at least a few of those popping up in the daytime heating. So across portions of Geneva, Houston County, Holmes and Jackson County, that's where a severe thunderstorm warning is. There's other pop-up activity that's across the central Big Bend and other sections of southwestern Georgia. So we still have the opportunity for a few more of these more active storms to still kind of interact with the daytime heating that's underway and the positioning of our cold front, which is not going to make a clean sweep through our area, but just because of the mix of ingredients that we have today, there's a good likelihood that we can have maybe a few more severe thunderstorm warnings and the possibility for a couple more tornado warnings. But again, the main point of concern here is within the Nashville-Allenville corridor of Highway 129, and just to the west of there, Nashville likely getting in on at least some possibilities of some gusty winds and hail, as well as that frequent lightning coming in for you. If there is a circulation that's occurring, it will be just to the south of you. We'll go into our other storm relative velocity mode. And again, it's kind of a very messy picture as far as where the tight circulation is. But there has been that ongoing trend of where some very strong gusty winds can come on the south side of that thunderstorm cell. So even though you may not have an actual funnel or something touching the ground, you'll still have a field of very strong gusty winds that will propagate its way towards the 129 region and into the Allenville and maybe just around the Nashville area. Those wind gusts can certainly pick up to considerably strong levels, and that can cause hazardous conditions for you right about now. And if you're not getting in on some of that action right now in the 129 region around Allenville to Nashville and Howard Bradford Road, what's this? WD Nash Road and Coffee Road. Those are going to be some areas that will be slammed by some of these strong wind gusts that are being shown coming out of this, as well as the heavy rain. Some of that pink and magenta shade that's coming around Nashville, that can be an indication of large or moderate hail. And that trend has also been shown in our analysis tools here with Titan Radar, where we've had a history of possible to probable large hail action here in the western side of Berrien County. That will will begin to move into the Nashville area as well. So you have a multifaceted severe weather potential when it comes to wind, when it comes to hail, and when it comes to heavy rain, as well as the lightning that's being occurred within this thunderstorm. So as it keeps moving to the east at about 35 to 45 miles per hour, it will continue to give us some hassles, to say the least, over the course of the next few minutes with this ongoing tornado warning. That's why we're on the air here on ABC 27 and streaming through our digital platforms to make sure folks who are contained or who are within our viewing area and the reach of our weather signal, we want to make sure folks who are capable to get the information have a way to do it. And if you were watching something on regular ABC 27 programming, we don't purposefully interfere with the programming unless it's an absolute necessity, and a tornado warning is one of those necessities. And once this is expired and past us, we'll definitely go back to the normal programming that you may be expecting. But since we do have a tornado possibility here in our South Georgia realm of our viewing area, that's why we're on the air giving it the proper coverage that it deserves for thunderstorms that continue to swiftly move towards the east and passing through the 129 corridor here in Berrien County. So Nashville, Allenville to Ray City. In Ray City, you may be just on the southern extent of that thunderstorm cell, and there's still a likelihood that you can encounter some strong gusts with this, so that is a possibility that continues. You may be able to avoid the circulation aspect of this thunderstorm, but there's still going to be some gusty winds that come along the Highway 37. So you will still have a pickup in the winds. You'll still have the possibility of some power interruptions and outages caused by the gusty winds. That's going to be the main corridor between Nashville and Ray City for the highest likelihood of strongest winds. And the rotational values continue to be in kind of a marginal phase, to where if things come together just right, or if there's just a little extra burst of strong south winds within this thunderstorm cell, we can have something a little more substantial that can form from that cloud. Right now, it's just kind of a mess when it comes to the radar's ability to detect that strong opposing wind force. And mostly seems like it's the outflow that's coming in from that very strong rain shaft that's been coming across the river and into the Allenville area. Hail and heavy rain, frequent lightning in the Nashville to Weber vicinity. The lightning flashes have continued to be very frequent, and they happen quite often. It looks like it's mostly aloft with the lightning, but you can have some occasional cloud-to-ground strikes. And again, that's definitely a hazardous portion and a hazardous element of our thunderstorm that's present right here in Berrien County. But the thunderstorm risk, as far as the tornadic circulation goes, continues to kind of linger, where we have this little gap in the data between Allenville and Nashville. That's what we call an inflow notch, and I'm not going to get too sciencey about it, but that's where we have at least a strong enhanced inflow of air into the thunderstorm and going up into the thunderstorm. That's why there's a good likelihood for hail on the northern side of the storm in Nashville, and where the outflow of rain and gusty winds come in, that can cause the rotation that can give us a tornado at times. And it may even be just a brief touchdown or no touchdown at all, but there's still the high possibility for the circulation to at least give off some wind gust elements that have been capable in the past of causing some local damage, and there's still quite a possibility of that occurring. So we can't discount that possibility, even though we are still in a radar indicated mode of tornadic activity. We are not in a confirmed tornado situation here in Berrien County, but you still have rough weather that will take some time to push out as we go into the next few minutes. That tornado warning continuing until 2:45, so we really still have about 30 minutes to go with this. The severe thunderstorm watch is in effect for more of just South Georgia, but also in our North Florida regions, because of a possibility of some of those pop-up thunderstorms that can create strong gusty winds and hail, even along the I-10 corridor. So that's just to give an outline of the possibility of additional thunderstorms that can ramp up to strong and severe levels. Gusty winds and hail will be the primary concerns out of these. But again, as we've seen, some of these can give off tornadic characteristics, and that's something that cannot be ignored. there's also the possibility for some power outages that can occur at times with these thunderstorms. And that's one aspect that is definitely something that if you don't have any damage, you could have the lights out for quite some time. And through past thunderstorms earlier today, there's just been a few hundred areas or a few hundred customers that have lost power so far across Thomas, Colquitt, and Mitchell counties. But nonetheless, that is still a possibility that cannot be disregarded when you have any kind of thunderstorm that gives off a lot of wind gusts. There's still certainly a possibility for power to be lost for a while. And sometimes those reports take some time to trickle in and get into the system, so it's very likely that if we do have wind-related aspects of damage here from either straight line winds or something tornadic, you can certainly have an interference with the power availability where you are. So the thunderstorm itself continuing to make its steady progress towards the Alapa River. So now the thunderstorm risk, at least the height of it, when it comes to wind, hail, and even circulation, seems like it's going to start to move away from Nashville over time. You still have a trail of heavy rain that is going to follow, so the rain is not going to let up necessarily for a while. So you'll still have some not so great weather to deal with, but at least when it comes to the worst part of the thunderstorm, based on radar analysis and radar data, it'll start to pull or push away from Nashville, heading more towards the Weber area along Highway 76, if I'm not mistaken. That's where we have at least a higher likelihood for some hail on the eastern side of Highway 76. And then along 168, as you're moving east of Nashville, pardon me, that's one area where you can also have some gusty or hail, and maybe even a combination of hail and gusty winds. If there is a circulation that can cause a funnel or a tornado, it's likely in this little area a little northeast of Allenville. While Allenville itself, you have the outflow of this portion of the thunderstorm that's giving off very strong winds. So you can certainly have the indications of high gusty wind threat, which can create some issues just by that alone. When it comes to maybe some snap trees, it can affect power lines. It can cause some structural damage if trees fall a certain way. So there are some considerations that you have to keep in mind, and some of this activity will head in the general area of Teeterville. Ray City, you're kind of, as I mentioned, on the southern edge of this, but some of those gusty winds can move through in a short amount of time. Teeterville may be next in line for this little batch of strong outflowing winds, which can cause some issues when it comes to gusty winds. Getting a little bit of information from the National Weather Service as far as the status of these of this current warning. We will start to perhaps see a severe thunderstorm warning going up within some portions of this region, as this has definitely been more of a wind gust driven thunderstorm, and it's kind of struggled to get its act together to sustain a tornado. It's been kind of back and forth in that borderline area. So nonetheless, there is definitely still some hefty wind gusts that this thunderstorm will create, and we'll see how the warning setup is going to be changed over time. But nonetheless, we still, for this current time, have a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning that's going on for this thunderstorm area in Berrien County. Now beginning to push out of Nashville, though the heavy rain still continues for you. Allenville, the strongest winds are coming through you right now. Ray City, you're kind of on the edge of the strongest winds that this thunderstorm can provide, as well as the heaviest rain. Teeterville, you're kind of next in line for this thunderstorm here in Lanier County. Not quite there yet, but it's moving in that general direction. So expect a strong pickup in the winds for you along Highway 64 there. And the Teeterville Road area, that's going to be a zone where those strong gusty winds will start to increase. So neighborhoods, communities, interest within that region, that's where winds will start to increase to perhaps hazardous strong levels. And then ongoing possibility for some faint circulation, still a little displaced to the north of Teeterville, still within the bounds of Berrien County, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be a zone a little way south of 76. That's going to be a location where some of those 168 rather, and south of 76, but near and south of 168. That's if there is a circulation that's still trying to keep itself intact. It's going to be within that little region there. County Road 56, Teeterville, Skeet Range, and south of Radio Station Road. So those will be some of the hazards that this thunderstorm will continue to carry forward and eastward into northern Lanier County through the next 10 to 20 minutes as we continue to monitor the progress of this possible tornadic thunderstorm. losing some of the solid data that prompted the original warning, but still there are characteristics of gusty winds and hail that this thunderstorm will still be able to cause in these eastern portions of Berrien County and northern Lanier County. So Lakeland, mentioned earlier, the edge of this thunderstorm will come fairly close to you. You can have some of that gusty outflowing wind coming in your direction within the next 5 to 10 minutes. You may be able to keep what suspected circulation it contains to your north. You're still in the tornado warning nonetheless. Definitely wise to make sure that you're monitoring this very closely and that you're on top of some of the latest information as we continue to give that to you here during our storm tracking coverage here on ABC 27. We will continue to stay on top of it for you. But Lakeland, just be aware, especially north of Lakeland itself, that's where the highest likelihood for the strongest winds will be placed in that northern edge of Berrien County, of Lanier County rather, and the southern and southeastern portions of Berrien County. Still included in that warning, that's where we see at least the ongoing trends of the strongest winds. Lowndes County, that far northern sliver there near the Barretts area on 125, this storm is not really going to come into your area as far as any kind of tornadic circulation. So that's not going to be a concern for you, but you can have some of the residual strong outflowing winds that this thunderstorm is producing, and that can have an effect for you right on that northern edge there near the county line. But the suspected circulation has stayed to your north. So in Lowndes County, especially Valdosta, you're not even included in this warning. It's well to your north, but that's going to be a corridor, especially north of the county line there in Berrien County and northern Lanier County, where the thunderstorm has the highest capability of causing some wind-related damage. Let's see what the new issuance here is for a severe thunderstorm warning. Large hail is also a possibility. Cook, Lanier, and Berrien counties will see a yellow box popping up before too long. There it is. A little bit too much in the overall map movement there, so we'll recalibrate, pull it back down. There's the area of the severe thunderstorm warning. Kind of overlaps much of the tornado warning, but again, there has been some decent, solid indications where there's been large hail forming from this, and there's still a high likelihood. In fact, the National Weather Service just mentions a hail diameter of about 1.5 inches possible from this portion of the thunderstorm. So this has been something that we've been talking about for a while. Near south of Weber, along Highway 168, Teeterville, you can have some of that hail accumulation as well. Maybe accumulation is not the right word, but some of that action can create some considerably large hailstones based on various analysis products, including our hail path, or the history of how hail has been forming and being produced within the thunderstorm itself. And hail is one element of a severe thunderstorm. So there is definitely that high possibility. And if the hailstone is large enough, it may not be like in the plains where you get, baseball, softball size hail, but it can be large enough to create some effects and damage. So keep that in mind as well. The configuration of the severe thunderstorm warning, which is in effect until 3, kind of tells me that that is going to kind of override, if you will, the tornadic possibilities of this thunderstorm. Now, the tornado warning is still in effect, and because it is, we'll stay on with our coverage, but this may be transitioning into more of straight line winds, combination of hail that can fall from this thunderstorm, especially Teeterville to the north along 168, and as you move into the northern side of Lanier County, those are going to be some areas where we have the highest chances for the combination of strong gusty winds as well as the hail. There's still a considerable amount of wind gust potential here, with some of the values being sampled, especially near the Teeterville area. There's still some good hefty wind gusts that's being detected, about 53 miles per hour. This is closer to the radar site, so it gives a little more reliability as far as what kind of caliber of winds we can be experiencing here. And I do believe that's part of the reason why this is being transitioned eventually into an ongoing severe thunderstorm warning, and not so much for the eventual or an actual tornadic circulation to form, because it has really struggled since we've been on the air tracking the storm and its potential to give us an actual tornado. Just have not seen enough consistent, strong signals to see that. So even though there is not likely to be a tornado, there's definitely going to be some straight line winds that come out of this for the southeastern side of Lanier County, of Berrien County and northern Lanier County, including maybe near Lakeland, but especially north of Lakeland, I think is where we have the highest chances for those strongest winds as we go into the next few minutes. So this is the portion of our region where we still have some rough weather. This is part of the original batch of individual thunderstorms that have crossed through tri-states, moving into the interior of South Georgia. It's a warmer time of day. We still have a strong southerly breeze. We'll monitor this as it begins to maybe move more into the Clinch County area, especially on the far northwestern side. The Jacksonville National Weather Service office is responsible for warnings in Clinch County, so we'll see if anything is going to be placed there over time. And it's not just our interior South Georgia regions, but it's also going to be across our North Florida areas where we do have the ongoing chance for some of these more active storms. You may also have a few passing showers at times in portions of the Big Bend and portions of the tri-state. These are not severe around Lake Talquin, Lake Jackson, around Metcalf, around Meigs and Ocklawaha. These aren't severe, but they can maybe grow into thunderstorms that can produce some gusty winds of their own, and we'll have to see how the environment is for the possibilities of hail. So there is that chance, even in these not so impressive showers that are around, there is that possibility for at least a few more of these thunderstorms that can develop during the course of the afternoon, and that's why we have that severe thunderstorm watch that was recently, not recently issued, but it was issued earlier, and that will continue to be something to keep in mind for future plans. Now, seeing that the warning is being canceled, the tornado warning is being canceled for that region in South Georgia, so that's definitely a piece of good news to pass along. That red shaded box will disappear very soon, but I've just mentioned about Clinch County. There can be some of this thunderstorm pushing in over the next few minutes. So the northern side of Clinch County is a severe thunderstorm warning. That's in effect until 3 o'clock, and that's pretty much in conjunction with the original severe thunderstorm warning. So Lakeland, north of you, and into the Alapa River area, that's where we're going to have the peak of this storm's ability to cause rough weather. This will start to push towards the Sermons, 8 Mile Still area, and along Highway 441 and the local highways in northern Clinch County, perhaps around the Arabia Bay vicinity. That's where we can have this thunderstorm going. But the thunderstorm risk, or rather the tornado risk with this thunderstorm in Berrien County, has decreased enough to where the tornado warning has been allowed to be discontinued. Keep in mind, there's still a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for all South Georgia and 5 North Florida counties, including Leon, Gadsden, Jefferson, and Madison, until 5 p.m., where we can still see some thunderstorms popping up. But since we have lost our tornado warning, that threat has passed. We'll take you back to normal programming on ABC 27, and we'll take a break from our streaming as well. But we'll come back in about 10-15 minutes. If there's any other active thunderstorms, we'll conduct a live stream through our various digital channels. Thanks for joining us.
The advantage at halftime, barring something very